Hey people, welcome to the Run Testers, and in this video, Run Tester Nick and I are going to be comparing the Nike Alphafly Next Percent 2, hot off the press, with the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Plus. Let's have a quick look at some of the key details then. Well, when it comes to drop, the Alphafly comes in at 8mm. The Metaspeed Sky Plus is slightly lower at 5mm. On weight, in a men's UK size 8.5, the Sky Plus weighs 203 grams or 7.2 ounces, while the Alphafly comes in a chunk heavier at 246 grams or 8.7 ounces. On price, the Metaspeed Sky is going to cost you $250 in the US, £225 in the UK. We didn't have the price for the Alphafly 2 at the time of launch, but we're expecting it to be around the same price as the Alphafly 1, which if it hits that, it's going to be around £260 in the UK and $275 in the US. So let's have a quick whip round of these shoes, see what's similar, what's different, tell you what they're both kind of used for, or made for, designed for, what their purpose is, and also draw out some of the differences, tell you some of the things that you could look for in each of the shoes. Well, first up, both of these shoes are carbon plate shoes with super foams made lightweight for racing. Now, they arguably can be used over any distance. Nike has come out pretty strongly and said that its Alphafly Next Percent 2 is its marathon shoe. It's designed for people trying to reach peak performance over the 42 kilometers, 26.2. But obviously you can use it going shorter distances. We have in the test, and we'll come on to that a bit later. Same deal really for the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Plus. This one, again, carbon plate race shoe, built for chasing PBs, built for when you want to go fast, potentially a little bit more accommodating over some of the shorter distances though. But these are definitely shoes you're going to want to pick when it comes to race day, probably more so than when you're doing your training. Now, they've both got high stacks of that kind of super midsole foam. Carbon plates running through the middle of the shoe. With the ASICS, you've got a carbon plate that sits sort of slightly higher up in that midsole. And the idea here is that that plate, where it sits, is designed to sort of activate more of the foam across the whole of the foot as it works. So you're getting a little bit more kind of firmness, a little bit more kind of propulsion across the whole foot, rather than there's a plate that sits lower in the other version of this shoe, which is the Metaspeed Edge Plus. There's obviously a key difference with the Alphafly Next Percent 2. The first really is that you've got these two air zoom pods that sit under the front of the forefoot, sort of, well, just at the back of the kind of forefoot, sort of midfoot, forefoot area here. And those are there to kind of add a little bit more firmness and a little bit more push when toe off kicks in. Now, what's changed here about the Alphafly 2 compared to the 1, we've got a video on the channel which you should watch about that, and a full review of the Alphafly, so pick that up. But you've got a little bit of extra ZoomX foam sitting under these pods here now, and that's there to offer a little bit of extra softness underneath those pods in toe off. But essentially you're getting a kind of similar setup here, which is, you know, you've got quite a kind of high stack of foam all the way to the rear, runs all the way sort of front to rear on both sets of shoes. Now that's quite important, I think, for when you get into the idea where you're sort of running a bit sort of ragged, your form's not quite so good, and you're maybe potentially kind of struggling a bit, where you kind of rock back onto your heels a bit. These shoes have a little bit more of a platform at the back, maybe a little bit more protective. Now, if you sort of flip them up like this, I think what you can see is that they've got a sort of similar, very sort of similar kind of width in the sort of mid-foot area where you're going to be landing, slightly wider on the Alphafly Next Percent 2. And then when you go into the heel, I don't know if I can sort of try and show you that. I think you can sort of see, again, Nike has added a bit of extra width on the Alphafly Next Percent 2. And I think that makes these, you've got a kind of wider base across the sort of main section of the heel sort of area here than you do with the Metaspeed Sky. The idea being with the Alphafly 2 to add you a little bit more stability. The other, I think, really important thing when it comes to the back of the heel and the differences in these two shoes is Nike has this kind of protrusion shape here. I'm not really sure what this kickback is designed to do. You don't really have that heel flick on the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Plus, but what you do have is a sort of slight cutaway and a slight sloping on the Metaspeed Sky. And that does sort of have a tendency to sort of roll you out just a little bit on the back. It's sort of, yeah, not too pronounced, but it is there. When you're looking at the uppers, I guess, you know, you've got quite a lightweight, breathable, Atom Knit 2 structured upper on the Alphafly. It sort of feels quite plasticky. It's not so material. And I think, you know, you've got a bit more of almost like a traditional sort of upper on the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Plus. It feels a little bit more material. It has got some kind of overlaid sort of structures here, or it's sort of knitted in. And yeah, I think overall there is quite a stark difference between those two uppers. The other big difference is that the Alphafly Next % 2 has a booty construction and quite a narrow opening up the top here, which means that it fits quite snug. You have to kind of work quite hard to get your foot in, and that is going to wrap your foot. And if you've got high feet or wide feet, getting your feet in and that kind of overall feeling can be interesting. It's much easier to lace into the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Plus, which have a separate tongue, like a very, very lightweight, thin, minimal tongue. They both got the same laces. They both got these kind of sort of lock-tight laces with this kind of ribbing on them. Yeah, there's more cushioning and protection and padding up here in the Metaspeed Sky Plus, and I think personally that makes for a bit of a more comfortable overall run. You've got some cushioning in here that's sort of set a bit lower in the Alphafly 2, and then you go down into quite a kind of stiff sort of heel counter. The heel counter and that cushioning is quite separate. That's something we've seen on other kind of Nike kind of carbon race shoes. The padding that's supposed to kind of rest against the heel is separate from the heel counter, and that's something to consider here. The heel counter is a little bit more kind of built into one piece and comes up sort of higher, and sort of it's more curved in the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Plus. I guess the other thing is on the Alphafly, you've got a little bit more of a narrow sort of cupping for the heel, really a little bit, than you have on the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Plus. Flip them over onto the grip then, and the Alphafly have a new kind of grip pattern. They've got a new thinner set of rubber. They've got some more cutaways there in the middle here to show the plates, and it kind of saves a bit of weight. But, you know, I think you've got sort of similar coverage overall. You've got a bit more rubber going into the back of the heel here on the Metaspeed Sky Plus, and that kind of tries to, I think, kind of deal with some of the sort of heel cutting issues that there was durability problems with this shoe. But overall, you're getting kind of a similar placement of grip and rubber, although we'll come on to which of them is the grippiest in the review.
So I found that the fit of the Metaspeed Sky and the Alphafly were both true to size for me. The Metaspeed Sky has a much less complicated fit, I think it's fair to say. It slips on very easily, you can do it up. I think it's probably why triathletes enjoy it more than this booty style fit on the Alphafly 2, which is quite hard to get on quickly. But once they were on, I found that they both fit me true to size. A lovely hold around the midfoot and heel in both shoes with no rubbage at all. So I was, yeah, perfectly happy with both of them.
So for fit for me was an interesting one. I struggled to get into the Alphafly ones. I couldn't actually get them on my feet, so I didn't run very much in those shoes at all because they were just very uncomfortable to put on. The Alphafly 2 is still a very, very tight fit for me. I ran both of these in a UK 8.5, which is my size. The Alphafly is still a struggle to get on. I have to use these pull tabs quite a lot and give them a lot of tugging to get my foot through this rather narrow opening and get that kind of booty fit up and over the top of my high feet. So you can expect a much kind of tighter, snugger fit from the Alphafly 2 Next % than you will from the ASICS Metaspeed Sky, which is a more traditional kind of entry, more traditional feel in terms of the overall upper and the fit. When it comes into the toe boxes, I found that both of these were sort of plenty roomy. Overall, fit-wise though, I think, yeah, once the Alphafly was on, it was good and comfortable, and I like that wrapping feel. But for a sort of ease of getting on and pure kind of natural feel, then I think the Metaspeed Sky Plus had a slightly better fit for me.
So the Metaspeed Sky Plus and the Alphafly 2 I think are two of the best carbon racing shoes going, and I've really enjoyed testing them both of late. I had the Metaspeed Sky Plus in first and I took it straight to Edinburgh to race the Edinburgh Half Marathon in it, and I came away with a PB, which is always a very good start with a shoe if you PB straight away. So I ran 1:10.23 there, knocking 2 seconds off my PB, and I did feel like it felt fantastic underfoot. The ride is really bouncy, very comfortable, does give you a little bit of tip forward when you're running well, but I did notice with that shoe when I started to tire or the wind hit me, I started to just sit back a bit and try and relax a little bit in a race. It didn't feel quite as good underfoot. I didn't think I got quite as good a transition from it or such an explosive feel as when I was running with purpose. I am not the classic ASICS stride runner. I'm a very shuffly heel striking runner, so I probably would suit maybe the Metaspeed Edge more, but I've always loved using the Sky, and when I am on it and running hard at any distance, it does feel very good, very comfortable, very cushioned, very bouncy, and very quick. Now the Alphafly is similar. It's you know, ridiculously cushioned and comfortable, but I think it's got a ride I think that works better for me in terms of tipping me forward and getting me onto the kind of air zoom pods at the front for a kind of more explosive and bouncy toe off. I think the Zoom X foam is still the best foam on the market for kind of carbon racing shoes. The FF Blast in the Metaspeed shoes is fantastic, but I just think you're getting a little bit more from the Nike foam. And I've loved using the shoe for a range of stuff so far. Like I've gone out for a couple of long runs, I've done a 20 miler, I've done around 24K, I've Also done a park run in it down at Fleetwood Promenade while I'm away on holiday, as well as a kind of a really hard workout. And I've worked at different race paces in it. I've done 3K, working around kind of half marathon towards 10K race pace. I've done several long stints at marathon pace in the shoe, and obviously I've gone all out and run a 5K in it, aiming for kind of my 5K sub 16 pace, but a brutal headwind rather knocked me off course during that park run in the first half. And although I think I ran 3 of the 5 kilometers, splits within the race at a sub 16 pace. The other 2 were so hard into the headwind that I ended up running like a 16:40. But I just think it works at loads of different race paces. The point I'm trying to say here, I'll come to it now. I'll come to that point. It feels a bit awkward and cumbersome when you're running slowly, but once you do lock into a race pace, it does feel really good. It's very fast, feels actually quite natural on the foot, and it just keeps you rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling, even as you start to tire when you're working either in like a long rep or indeed a long race or like a 20-mile run. So I think they're both really fantastic kind of carbon racing shoes, but I just think maybe you get a little bit more from the foam in the Nike, and I think the design works a little bit better for me in terms of keeping me going, whether that's because I'm tired at the end of a race or just trying to sit back and kind of maintain a holding pattern during the early stages of a race. I think that's when the Alphafly really excels, whereas I think with the Metaspeed Sky I had to be a little bit more purposeful and on it the whole time, and that I find a little bit more tiring over the course of a long race.
So for my run test, I've done loads of different miles in these shoes, lots of different terrain, lots of different paces. I've gone long marathon runs, 3-hour marathon runs in both shoes. I've done a short 5K race in the Metaspeed Sky Plus that was all out and ran a very quick time in that on tired legs. I've done my fastest ever mile in the Alphafly Next Percent 2 on very tired legs as well, and my third ever fastest mile in this one. I've also done a full marathon test with fast miles built into that, and I did a really slow and low kind of half marathon test. So I've done all the ranges, all the paces, I've done tarmacs, I've done twists and turns, all of those things. And for me, these shoes, there's some similarities here in terms of how these shoes run. First thing I'm going to say, the Alphafly has much more punch, there's much more propulsion. You can definitely feel the accentuated spring in this shoe much more than I think you can with the Metaspeed Sky Plus. Both shoes are fast shoes, both shoes I've really enjoyed running in, both shoes I'd be happy to race a marathon in. We're splitting hairs here, we're going into the margins of which one really is the best, but I think they're both very, very capable carbon shoes and would be up there in my sort of top 2 or 3 carbon shoes of all time. Now, one of the things that I think they're both interesting for as well is versatility. Now, what I mean by that is if you're going to be training for a marathon and you're not sure what you're going to get, you're going out and you're not sure if your training has been bang on and you're going to risk it a bit, I think that both of these shoes, when you maybe get ragged and a little bit kind of stretched later in that last 6 miles where everyone can struggle, both of these shoes, because of that big stack of foam at the back on both of them and this kind of platform that's quite wide and it's quite kind of, the drops are there, but it feels quite kind of not flat, but there's good contact. I think that you can run a bit ragged in these, and there is protection there for them. There is a bit more kind of a base to run off. The one thing I'll say though, I think I agree with Nick in as much as the Alphafly Next Percent 2 move me up a little bit more onto my toes. They make me feel a little bit more kind of racy and a little bit more kind of pushed forward, where I found there was a temptation with the Metaspeed Sky to rock back a bit. When the Metaspeed Sky Plus worked best was really over that kind of fast 5K that I did, and I have to work quite hard to engage them in the right way. I have to be running in a certain form to really get the most out of that plate and that foam combination. And when they do that, when you can get into that form and activate them, they are fast, they are powerful, and they are a great shoe. I think they're lightweight, I think they're agile, I think they feel a bit more natural really on the foot than these kind of sort of slightly moon booty numbers. There's a bit more kind of traditional sort of feel to these than the Nike Alphafly Next Percent 2. And if you don't like the kind of over-engineered sort of style of these Alphafly Next Percent 2s, then I think the Metaspeed Sky Plus definitely have a place. One thing I will say about the Alphafly 2, because of the fact that I have to work hard to get these shoes on, I sort of struggle to get this kind of cushioning at the back and the heel construction sitting right. I don't really like the separation of that cushioning and that heel counter. I think this heel counter, I mean, you can almost see it if I roll that down there. That heel counter for me had a tendency to cut, and that's maybe because of the fit on the shoe. It was fine, I was able to run a marathon, I would take it in order to chase a PB, but it did sort of start to dig into my heels. I don't get any of that from the Metaspeed Sky Plus. You can put them on and they are going to feel comfortable and disappearing throughout long runs, no matter what.
So you've got 2 cracking shoes here, I think, and you're going to be pretty happy whichever one you go for. I think the Alphafly is a better shoe. I'd probably use it really across the board compared to the Metaspeed Sky if you're on the right kind of course, which is to say a nice long straight roads with few turns. Metaspeed Sky is still a very high stack shoe obviously, and it's not the most agile and nimble, but it is lighter and it is a bit nimbler than the Alphafly, and it might be the more versatile pick for lots of runners who'll probably enjoy going and trying to thrash out a 5k, especially if there are a couple of turns in there, compared to the Alphafly, which really does excel on those long events, and it powers along kind of straight good roads really at any kind of race pace. But it is that little bit heavier, and some people might not like that in their racing shoe. Other thing to think about is value. The Metaspeed Sky Plus is not by any means a cheap shoe, but it is a bit cheaper than the Alphafly. And if you're someone who really lines up a couple of big marathons each year and they're your key target goals, that's like myself, like the Berlin Marathon is my big goal for the second half of the year, and probably I would pick my racing shoe around what would be the best shoe for that exact race, and for that reason I would go for the Alphafly out of these two. But if you're someone who likes to do lots of little races throughout the year, is maybe doing a marathon, but it might not be the overall goal that is all encompassing and all training is based around, then the Metaspeed Sky might be a better option, a bit more versatile, a bit lighter and a bit cheaper. So yeah, overall I would go for the Alphafly myself, but it's pretty close. They're both great shoes, and some people might find the Metaspeed Sky Plus suits their needs a little bit.
So my verdict on the battle between the Alphafly Next Percent 2 and the Metaspeed Sky Plus is kind of simple. If I'm going all out chasing a PB over a marathon distance, maybe even some of those shorter distances, half marathon. I mean, I ran my fastest mile in the Alphafly Next Percent 2, so even over the mile on kind of straight line, not too twisty, not too turny courses, I'm going to be lacing up the Alphafly Next Percent 2, even though they cut my heel a little bit. I would take that to go chasing those times. If I was going to go and run maybe something that's a little bit more twisty and turny, a little bit more difficult, I might go for the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Plus, just because I feel like it corners a bit better. It's a little bit more nimble. It's a bit more kind of natural, I think, and there's just a bit more control in tighter turns on it. Also, I think for training purposes, if I was going to do lots of miles in training in a carbon race shoe, then I think I would probably almost certainly go for the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Plus. I wouldn't put it as a training partner to the Alphafly 2, but I just think this is something that I think day to day, you're going to find easier to go and sort of run in. Whereas the Alphafly Next Percent 2, to me anyway, feels like something that I would really only want to pull out when I'm going to go and run and chase fast times. So for me, even though the Alphafly Next Percent is considerably more expensive, I think, if you're in the market for eking out those marginal gains, I think the price is worth paying, because this shoe just feels much faster. I think it is the one that is going to give you the best chance of chasing down that PB. So for me, the winner of the test really for racing is the Alphafly Next Percent 2. So there you have it. That's been our multi-tester review of the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Plus versus the Nike Alphafly Next Percent 2. We've got loads of videos on the channel looking at both of these shoes, comparing them to the other carbon racers. We've got a full review of the Alphafly 2 up. We've got the Alphafly 2 versus 1. There's loads of Metaspeed Sky Plus content up there. Some of these compared to the Vaporflies too, so check out those on the channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get more reviews when they come out. That really helps support the channel as well, so we can make more videos like this. If you have any questions, hit us up in the comments. I think that's everything I've got to tell you. It's been a pleasure to talk to you about these shoes, and we hope to see you again soon on the Run Testers.